All right, what's up, everybody? This is the Other Life podcast. I am Justin Murphy. What's going on? This is the first solo live show I've done in a little while. Super busy on amazing stuff. A lot of big news. Super excited actually to share with you all what's been going on here in Austin. I have my own podcast studio, the Other Life podcast studio for in-person video podcast. It's here. It's legit. It's actually already here. I just filmed the very first one with James Polos, who you might know from Twitter, or he's an author. He's written a couple books. He wrote a book about Tocqueville. He also is one of the founders of the American Mind magazine, which you might be familiar with on the internet. Cool dude all around. He was in Austin, so I said, "Hey, want to be my first victim? Come into the studio." So that'll drop probably in a week or two. Sometime in the next 3 weeks. We have a bit of a backlog, but the point is, yeah, I have an in-person place where I can bring badass people. That's not like, my house. I tried to do this a couple times. Well, I did, if you remember, for people who are longtime listeners or whatever. We did a few small group one-on-one / small group podcasts in this very room in my house, but that was clearly not going to be sustainable. It was pretty awkward. It was kind of cool and fun, but I'm not going to be able to scale that up. So one of my goals here in Austin was to eventually finagle a way to have a private podcast studio where I could do legit multi-camera video podcasts with cool people. So I'm actually pleasantly surprised to say how quickly I was able to figure that out. Shout out to the guys at Assembly Capital. They're some of the OG Urbit people in Austin and cool dudes all around. And yeah, they fuck with me. I fuck with them. So they have some extra room in their office, and I suggested, I was like, I could make good use of this room. What do you think about that? And they were game. So shout out to them. And yeah, so 2022 is going to be, I think, a big year for the podcast, and you'll see starting in a week or two some video podcasts coming out on this channel with me and people in a nice little room of our own. So stay tuned for that. Super pumped. Today, we're going to talk about a bunch of things because, like I said, there's a ton going on in the Other Life community. And also, I've been writing a ton. So I've really been focusing on the newsletter recently. And so I have all these writings and ideas kind of accumulated. I'm going to try to go through some interesting, what I think are some of the most interesting topics and themes that I've been thinking about and writing about recently. For those of you who, maybe you're too busy, maybe you don't have the time or energy to read all my long newsletters I've been sending out now. I'll give you a nice little synopsis here for your listening pleasure. If you have questions or comments and you're watching live on YouTube, you can, drop a comment or question, and I will, if it's a good question and relevant of interest to the audience, I will consider answering it. All right. So yeah, we're going to talk about Angelicism. Angelicism is a very interesting, very creative, and I would say somewhat buzzy blog that has emerged, a newsletter that has emerged in the past year. The way I think about it, or the way that I read them, is it's a kind of auto detonation of academic theory. So it's extremely schizoid to the point of an almost kind of surrealist vibe, kind of extreme symbological scatology at times. That's perhaps speaking too strongly. There are really interesting ideas in there, for sure. But it's also a lot of chaos, kind of purposely cultivated symbolic chaos, let's call it. I think that's a fair way to put it. So the person is academically trained, you can tell. And I actually do know the person a little bit from back in the day before they were Angelicism. I will not blow up his or her spot since it's obviously a pseudonymous project. But yeah, clearly you can tell from reading them that they're academically trained. And I think I make the argument in one of my recent newsletters that this is really the kind of unconscious or subliminal underwriting of the whole project. It seems very schizoid. It seems very kind of down to earth and very kind of anti-establishment. But if you tried to do the Angelicism newsletter without the prestigious academic signifiers, if it wasn't someone who was competently trained in those signifiers, I think it would fall flat to a lot of people. And so this is kind of to most people, I don't think it would have the buzz. I don't think it would have the traction that it has. And this doesn't in any way make it, invalid or something. It's just, I write this newsletter about that as kind of the crux of my review, because it's just important. And it kind of changes how you see the stakes and how you interpret it. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'll break down some of what Angelicism is all about in my review and some of the key ideas there. That piece actually got a lot of traction. A lot of people shared it. It was kind of polarizing. Like my buddy Barrett Avner from the Contain podcast, who you might remember from previous episodes, he didn't like it. He came out swinging pretty hard on Twitter. It's all good, but he definitely had some words for me, which is fine. But a lot of people actually, I was surprised. A lot of people really liked it. I guess it hit a nerve. I guess a lot of people kind of see this new trend or this new fashion right now of just like purposely skitzed out, kind of truly at times incomprehensible skitzed out writing is kind of fashionable with a certain set. So I didn't even know how many people knew about it or whatever, or if people cared or if people agreed with me, but I had no idea that this would hit. But a lot of people actually replied to me on the down low, and they were like, "Yo, I totally agree with you. Thanks for writing this." I was surprised. I mean, I didn't see it as this kind of like crusade or anything. It was just, it was actually because Angelicism mentioned me a couple times, and I was grateful for their attention. So I do find what they're doing to be noteworthy. It's worth paying attention to and thinking critically about. So it was ultimately a sign of respect that I wrote about Angelicism. It was much more a sign of respect than an attack or anything like that. Even if I think that approach is highly limited in the long run, I applaud anyone doing interesting stuff like that. So yeah, we'll talk maybe a little bit more about that. But honestly, I kind of just said it all right there. So I may or may not even return to it. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about some of the ideas there. But I just gave you the summary right there. And we'll talk a little bit about some cool things going on in the community. We have a lot of events coming up, like free stuff, cool stuff, and we have some stuff coming up in Austin. If anyone wants to come hang out in Austin, and the Urbit group is like totally kicking off. That's been a really interesting initiative, and I want to share some report backs on what's going on in the Urbit group, how we're building out the Urbit group. I'm basically for people who make valuable contributions in the Urbit group, I'm going to basically retroactively pay people. I'm going to give small gifts of crypto to people who make valuable contributions in the Urbit group, and I'm going to share that content into the newsletter. So we're going to be building this like pretty radical, I think, circuit between the Urbit group, which is community owned in the sense that everyone owns their own data, and I'm going to be kind of decentralizing ownership of the community itself to members of the community, mostly through the community ERC20 token that we have, the life token, which is not a speculative asset. It's just a kind of ledger of contributions made to the community, and I will use it to index or represent, proportionate shares, if you will, of ownership over the community. Not in a kind of financial sense, but in a way that will, over time, we will be able to actually program it such that the Urbit real estate that the group runs on will and should be owned by the holders of the life token. So that's kind of the vision, and I think we're super early days for all of this. I mean, it's all very new. It's incredibly new, right? But the only way to figure it out is to tinker and to play around with it. So I'm just thinking through what we're gonna do with all of that. So anyway, so that's really kicking off. Like people are really writing in the group now. We have like more than 1,000 people. So I'll talk a little bit more about what's going on there, and we'll talk about some other things. I want to talk about Milady. I don't know how many of you know about the Milady maker crew, the Remelia Corporation. If you listen to one of the podcasts I did with Soph at the Urbit Assembly, she was kind of repping Milady. They're a very strange, but I would say technically, literally, they are the only accelerationist kind of NFT art phenomenon happening right now. It's the only kind of digital art collective that's relevant on the internet right now that is explicitly accelerationist in the kind of Landian sense. And so I I have to pay attention to that and be interested in that. So I'll kind of give you some of my takes on Milady. I'll give you some more of my takes on Angelicism and this kind of new trend of super skitsed out to the point of incomprehensible theory writing on the internet. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit about events and the podcast studio and everything brewing in Austin. So you can consider this podcast just a little personal update with a lot of different takes and some stuff from my writing. So I want to start with, let's just do some housekeeping on events. I want you all to be aware of some things that are coming up, totally free, online and in person, whichever you want. Come to all of them or some of them as you can. But actually, before I do that, what I should tell you all is, yeah, I've been writing way more on the newsletter. It's kind of becoming a real focus. So if you're not subscribed to the Other Life newsletter, go and subscribe to the Other Life newsletter right now. Just go to otherlife.co. That's otherlife.co and subscribe to the newsletter. That's basically the center of everything that I'm doing. So all the events that are coming out, all the podcasts that are coming out, all of my best work is published through the Other Life newsletter. So if you listen to these podcasts on YouTube or on the podcast feed, you are by definition interested in what I'm doing enough that you definitely want to subscribe to the newsletter at otherlife.co. So please just go ahead and do that before you forget. And the other thing I want to share with you by way of just news and housekeeping is we are going to run the second cohort of the indiethinkers.org accelerator on April. It'll start on April 25th. So if you're working on independent intellectual work of any kind, if you're a writer, if you're interested in philosophy or social science or anything that involves you doing long-term deep thinking and creative work, then you might be a good fit for the Indie Thinkers program. For those of you who don't know, I've been building this out for more than 2 years now. We've tried different methods, we've tried different models, but we basically have an insanely cool community of independent intellectual types of people. People look down on this word intellectual. People think it's pretentious or whatever, but I say, fuck you. It's actually, I think of it as a technical term. Like, there are people in this world who are intellectuals. There are people who are not. It's like it's not like bragging. It's not saying you're smart. It's just saying you are accursed with the bug of needing to think like crazy about everything, and it's a bad thing as well as a good thing. It's neither good nor bad, but it is a distinct type of person, and if it is the type of person who just feels called to read and write and try to make some kind of dent in the world through thinking and through writing and through kind of honest, authentic, creative expression of some kind. That is what sets true intellectuals apart from the rest of people. And it's not an elitist thing. It's not like oh, I'm so smart thing. It's a type of person. And you know what? Frankly, I'm proud to try to represent it because people are, I don't know, we actually live in a fairly anti-intellectual culture where, if you're just an unabashedly intellectual type, you have to kind of candy coat it. You have to act like you're not. You have to kind of act like a normal person because you're called pretentious otherwise. Yeah, well, fuck you, man. Like if all you really care about is reading and writing and trying to make a dent in how the world thinks, then you're an intellectual and you are different from other people, and we need different structures and communities that really understand that and facilitate that and foster that. So that's what Indie Thinkers is all about, basically. So yeah, you can enroll or sign up to learn more at indiethinkers.org. This will be the second cohort that we're doing now. It'll be starting on April 25th. We just finished the first one, and it was awesome. If you want to know why I've been writing so much the past few weeks, it's because I do the cohorts as well. I'm a member as well as kind of the leader of them, or the facilitator, if you will. And we do a ton of work. It's all about kind of enabling people to do way more work, way more effectively. And so I do them. And so, yeah, if you've been wondering how I've been publishing so much in the past few weeks, it's because I do the cohort. So if you want to, significantly accelerate your independent projects, just give it a look, think about it, and let me know if you have any questions. You could just email me. We could jump on a private call if you want, whatever. So yeah, that'll kick off on April 25th, and you can enroll at indiethinkers.org. I put a link in the show notes. And then finally, if you happen to be in Austin, or nearby or can get here, we're going to be doing a Other Life times Urbit meetup. The Urbit Austin meetup group we're joining forces with them. And I'm kind of publicizing it through the newsletter and through the podcast here. We're going to do a joint little social mixer, not this Saturday, like tomorrow, but the following Saturday of the 9th in the evening. So I suspect it's going to be pretty big because the Urbit meetup is already fairly big. Like when the Urbit meetup people do the Urbit meetups once a month or so, usually about like 20 to 30 people come out, which is very healthy. It's good. Sometimes even more. And then, but this is the first time that we're doing the Other Life / Urbit collab. And obviously I have a pretty big and growing audience. So like, I think I just put out the word, I put out the event invite yesterday in the newsletter. And I think we already have like 20 RSVPs in like 24 hours. So I think it could end up being pretty big, and it could actually end up being like big enough that it's going to be a problem. I'm going to have to find a venue, and I'm a little stressed about it. But anyway, that is, you just have to drop an RSVP. I forgot to put that in the show notes here, but I'll do that. I'll do that when I'm done with this. And if just drop your email, and you're welcome to come through if you want to. Anyone who follows the Other Life newsletter, whether you're into Urbit or not, just Other Life people, and then there will be Urbit people. But it's a super cool scene. So yeah, if you're in Austin, I'd love to see you on April 9th, Saturday evening. All right, so that's enough by way of introduction and housekeeping and all of that. So let's talk a little bit about contemporary theory culture and this kind of new internet wave. Obviously, if you listen to this podcast, you know that there is a massive proliferation of independent intellectual life outside of institutions. And obviously, I'm super pumped on that. I support anyone who's doing anything at all interesting and independent outside of institutions and on the internet. And whoever it is, if it's interesting and in any way, honestly, I give that a ton of credit. So I'm not like here to shoot anyone down whatsoever. I think the Angelicism project is cool. I just think it's actually a really interesting case study. I think it's something that's really worth paying some attention to. So I want to kind of go over what it is, what it's all about, why it's interesting, and also, what I think it says about our culture and some of the limitations of contemporary kind of independent intellectual life and the current fashions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to just kind of show you my recent essay, and we'll kind of just go through it. This is on otherlife.co. This went out last week to all the subscribers. And so what the first thing that I think you should be aware of, if all of this is like totally confusing to you, you've never even heard of what the frick is Angelicism. Well, it's a really interesting newsletter, as I said before, and it is a real kind of explosion of academic theory. I mean, what they're doing is incredibly unique and truly wild. Let's take a quick look at it, shall we? I'll show you the URL. There's a link in my essay, but the URL is cachedcobrazhousewriter.substack.com. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. But it's the aesthetic that's popular is like all these crazy symbols, and the essays on Angelicism are things like, here's the headline you see when you first go to the Substack: "Somebody please Columbine the entire Drunken Canal editorial staff." And then, it's stuff like, "We may soon never be here again," in all caps. There's, notes on God, the vibe shift, water, and Ukraine. And there's another, "Somebody please Columbine the entire The Cut editorial staff." So there's a lot of, exhortations to Columbine people, reading notes on Kanye West and mathematics. It's like stream of consciousness style social theory, but on meth and totally skitzed out. Okay, so you get where I'm going. You probably have seen this kind of thing before. It's a bit of a fashion, and I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. I just mean that in the sense of this is kind of wet brain as well. I like the wet brain people. Got to meet them over at Urbit Assembly. Totally like them. They're hilarious. But look, folks, all I'm really here to say, and this is, I think, why this essay of mine, this review of Angelicism, hit a nerve with a lot of people for good and for bad, is that there are limitations to schizophrenia. Okay, read Deleuze and Guattari. They're as skeptical and concerned and cautious about schizophrenia as they sometimes can be accused of glorifying it. And it's not hard to understand the trade-offs here, right? So schizophrenia is in, or let's say like schizotypal traits. Schizotypal refers to kind of schized out, but not quite like clinical schizophrenia. So schizotypal attitudes and behaviors are very good at bringing with them creativity. They smash through different boundaries and borders. And there's a lot of, just really creative possibilities that emerge with the schizotypal. But there are drawbacks too, and this is just basic understanding of what schiz even means. The biggest difference is, or the biggest problem or drawback is that a little too much schizophrenia, if you make your writing a little too schizzed out, you could start to get dumb and you could start to make no sense. And you could start to get also things like paranoid, and you could start to see things that are not there. Okay, this is not rocket science. Everyone knows this when you think about it. And so really, one way to understand my essay is really, I was just kind of coming out and saying like, hey, stuff is really interesting. But personally, I get tired of it pretty quickly because call me old fashioned, but I do like to make sense out of things. I feel like what is really radical and significant and attractive about theory writing is to illuminate things that were not illuminated before. And especially when it comes to the independent, creative, avenues that are available to us through the internet. I make the argument in my essay that it's much more exciting and attractive to me to actually try to help people see real things that have real practical traction. And this is not necessarily reducing the intellectual vocation to some kind of, petty market logic or something like that. I'm not saying you have to commoditize intellectual work. I'm just saying that there is so much that is obscure and opaque that can be illuminated in a way that's clear and direct, and that actually empowers tons of people to fundamentally change what they're doing and to create new systems, create new lives, create new worlds, create new countries. There's just so much low-hanging fruit when it comes to being clear and direct, to rely on Apollo, if you will, rather than Dionysus. That, to me, all of the most exciting and powerful low-hanging fruit really is on the side of Apollo. And the Dionysus stuff, this Dionysian kind of purposeful, maxed out schizoid approach to thinking and writing, it is fun and it is kind of sexy and it's kind of thrilling and there is a place for it, no doubt. But personally, I just get bored of it pretty quickly. Like I don't really see too much of value other than the kind of cultural shock that it introduces, which is valuable, just like Dada, just like surrealism. Someone has to do that stuff every so often for sure. And I applaud Angelicism for doing it. It's just, I get a little, I'm kind of like, okay. It runs out of steam for me pretty quickly. That's all. I was just basically making that argument. And then I went on to kind of expand the argument and point out that very interestingly, when you really reflect on it, this style of kind of post-academic but still academic thinking and writing, I think is actually kind of positioned uncomfortably in a certain political economy that people don't really want to talk about, which is very similar to the political economy of radical left kind of para-academic writing. The kind of stuff that's popular with, let's say like Verso or what have you. One of the big pitfalls of a lot of academically trained para-academic radical left-wing thought in the past couple of decades is that it's so opposed to actually trying to help people because that's seen as kind of apologia for capitalism. That's seen as kind of ideology. You're just basically trying to tell people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. How dare you imply that? In that world, in that tradition, the idea is that all you should really do is try to critique capitalism as pointedly as possible. Don't give any advice or suggestions or try to come up with practical ways out or practical ways to escape the system or the capitalist machine, but just basically look into the heart of capitalism's evil as directly as you can. And that itself is supposed to be seen as interesting, illuminating, and also somehow emancipatory. This is somehow seen as like contributing to the revolutionary cause. And this produces a lot of very unfortunate tendencies and patterns that become habitual in the entire kind of academic, but even post-academic or para-academic radical left. And it's very much what Nick Land called transcendental miserableism in a famous essay in Fanged Noumena. And basically, I think that in a weird way, Angelicism remains locked into this orbit, if you will, because one of the things that Angelicism said about my writing is that I'm biased in a positive direction, that, because I'm interested in escape paths and exit routes, and I'm interested in how myself and others and all of us together can actually engineer new circuits of thinking and writing and producing and even monetizing in novel ways that escape the clutches of the state and of big capital. That to be interested in this kind of thing so practically and optimistically, it's like I'm just selling bourgeois commodities. I'm just a self-help guru or something. In the extreme case, that's where that would lead to. Basically, I think is the idea. And there's definitely something to be concerned about there, no doubt. Yeah, you can easily, if you're just peddling positivity and optimism on the internet and telling people how they can improve their lives or whatever, you can very easily, descend to the most kind of empty, silly, self-help commodity for sure. So if that's his only point or his or her only point, then fair enough. But I think that's just something to be on guard against. It's not like an intrinsically doomed aspect of trying to be concrete and direct and sensible and practical in one's theory writing on the internet. And on the other hand, I think what happens if you refuse to try to embrace exit paths and model them and share them and conduct them with other people, you remain locked into this transcendental miserableist attitude. And I'm not necessarily saying Angelicism is locked into transcendental miserableism. I don't know them well enough, and who knows? They could veer off into any direction and go in any direction. So I'm not overly characterizing them as that. I'm just saying that there is a real risk, and it seems like, at least in some of Angelicism's writings, they are in fact trapped in this transcendental miserableist orbit or circuit, where they see any type of clarity and actually trying to gain traction on how the empirical world works, to model it correctly and accurately, to actually empower yourself and other people to find liberation or empowerment or improved welfare of any kind. They do tend to see this as somehow intrinsically biased or undesirable. And so that's basically the gist of it. I don't want to totally belabor the point, but those are some of the big ideas that I present in this essay. And I kind of go into a little bit the history of kind of para-academic left-wing writing. And, something that I talk about towards the end is kind of my own philosophy that I think is in strong contrast to the transcendental miserableist attitude, which, again, I'm not saying Angelicism is a total miserableist, but I do fear that they are somewhat captured in that orbit. But another thing that I talk about is that the whole one big problem with the schizo style is that you're not really able to build something big that could last forever and have impact. And so forgive me, but this is something that I'm really interested in. I want to have influence. I want to be remembered. I want to build something that will last for hundreds of years. I want it all. I am ambitious, and I think that that's good and healthy. I think if you are a thinker and you want to, if you write and you almost intrinsically, it's almost implied that you want to change how people think. And if you want to change how people think, then why shouldn't you want to change how the future thinks to the maximum degree possible? I mean, I don't have any kind of like crazy delusions of grandeur. I don't think it's at all, I'm not saying I'm certainly going to or whatever. But sure, yeah, absolutely. That's how I think about it. And you know what? Actually, I just watched the Kanye documentary, and now I'm like, actually, I have delusions of grandeur, and I want to, and I want to go full out, all in on delusions of grandeur because it worked so well for Kanye. So yeah, part of me is actually like, you know what? Maybe I will have delusions of grandeur, and I'll just totally say, fuck it, I'm gonna be the this or that. But no, honestly, it's not my personality really. So truth is, I'm modest. I'm modest, normal dude about my own work or whatever. I don't think I'm God's gift necessarily. But I am shameless in saying that, yeah, I want to have long-term influence. I think any thinker or writer intrinsically should want that. And the problem with the schizo fashion right now is that, I mean, I like all these people. No, I'm not throwing shade on anyone, but like, are you going to build something that is meaningful, that's going to stand the test of time? I really doubt that. And that, is one of the big problems. And not because I'm not criticizing any individual's intelligence or shrewdness or capabilities whatsoever. I'm just saying the schizo style is kind of self-limiting in that way. It refuses to be focused and compounded. And you can argue that that's part of its appeal. You can argue that that's why it's sexy and why it's got a kind of cool X factor. And if you want to just go all in on that, be my guest. Nothing wrong with that. It's been tried, right? But and some people pull it off. Like, if you're going to be Artaud, for instance, yeah, sure. Maybe if you're going to be Artaud, you will produce a body of totally schitzed out ideas, and you will still be read 200 years from now, and your ideas will be studied and respected for, they'll be mined, with great dedication by, readers for generations and generations to come. Yeah, Artaud could pull it off. Maybe a few others pull it off. So if that's your gambit, then all the power to you. And I would love nothing more than for Angelicism to be that. And, happy to support. But the nature of this beast is that 99% of the young people who are writing and talking and podcasting in this style are never going to be read again. They're never going to be listened to again in the long-term future, just because most of it doesn't make sense. And if you're not able to forcefully converge on certain truths and then compound them over time in a way that is communicable and resonant in a fairly timeless way, then your chances of ever, surviving in the long-term meme pool is just much lower. Now, like I said, there's the path of Artaud. There are these other paths where you do it basically through the youth culture and through kind of sex and fashion, and that's like totally viable, right? If you can be enough of a superstar in terms of like being seen as a sex icon, or being legendary in being so legendary in the stories people tell or the things you've done that are just dramatic or performative. Again, that is a way to kind of enter in the human cultural canon and to stand the test of time. But again, it's higher risk, and the probability. And it's not that I'm against risk. It's that as a thinker, I want to, and I am most interested in reading and following stuff that is direct and clear, and that I think is interesting and meaningful and authentic and transparent. There is a kind of radicalism of transparency. So I'm not the grandpa here saying like, don't be risky, don't be edgy. That's not at all what I'm saying. I mean, people who listen to this podcast know me. That's definitely not me. I love the wild stuff. When I say it's a little too risky to go the full on skitzed out route, I'm not condemning risk or taking chances. Totally all about that. I guess what I meant when I said risky really is it's a bad risk. It's a bad bet. It's it's a little too doomed to failure. Whereas I think there's just a much larger set of cases. There's a much better chance of success if one chooses rather to be radical and risky in terms that are transparent and open and direct. Okay, so you could say there's a kind of Apollonian riskiness, there's a kind of Apollo's edginess, and then there's a Dionysian riskiness or a Dionysian edginess. And they can both be equally radical and provocative and badass and impactful and cool and on all of those things. But I think especially in the current context, where actually communicating with other human beings in a way that makes sense can connect with so many people and fundamentally help people in so many ways and help and allow a group to fundamentally create meaningful functional structures together. The payoffs to that are just so great. Whereas the payoffs to this like super hyper skitzed out style, the payoffs I think are just lower. It's going to last a much shorter amount of time. You're going to burn out unless you're willing to go balls to the wall, like someone like Artaud. Even if you're willing to go balls to the wall and sacrifice your whole life on the altar of the skits, even then you still might burn out before you're able to kind of achieve that cultural escape velocity. So yeah, this is a friendly quarrel between myself and some of these people in the skitzed out wing of contemporary culture, where I'm just basically saying I think I'm much more excited by the opportunities available to direct, frank speech. And so I close this essay by talking about legible but imperceptible parrhesia. If you've been following my work for a while, you'll know that one of the kind of key concepts that I'm interested in from the history of political thought, Foucault writes about it a lot in regards to Greco-Roman culture, people like Diogenes, but also Jesus Christ, is this concept of parrhesia, which is usually translated into English as frank speech. But it's a very specific kind of frank speech. Okay, it's basically being super clear and super direct to such an extreme degree that it starts breaking social norms and starts, getting you punished more or less. Okay, so as Foucault explains in The Courage of Truth, it has a certain key criteria. There's a certain set of requirements for parrhesia to function. And parrhesia is, in my mental model, kind of the perfect keyword for this kind of Apollonian radicalism, this Apollonian cultural radicalism, which makes sense and is clear and direct, but it's also chaotic and wild and truly kind of unhinged and radical. But most importantly, it has kind of demonstrable, predictable effects. Okay, so here I put in contrast to Angelicism's illegibility and lack of comprehension, the Deleuzian concept of imperceptible, which is not the same thing as being illegible. This is a conflation that I see a lot, actually, but these are just not the same things. To be imperceptible doesn't mean being purposefully wacky or obscure or hard to understand. It simply means being so far down an independent path that one is speaking with perfect sobriety, clarity, and directness, and still people don't really even understand exactly what you're saying because you're so far down a truly independent path. That's the essence of what Deleuze means by imperceptible. So it's very different than illegible. And I just think that that's a very subtle but very important and worthwhile distinction if you're interested in these questions around, the criteria and the dynamics of radical culture and how things actually function or fail to function. So I think I've said enough about all of this. I'm a fan of Angelicism. After all of that, I'm happy to count myself a fan. I like what they're doing, and I hope it grows and succeeds and continues into something bigger and better. I just think that at a time when the schiz is becoming so popular, I thought it'd be fun to kind of be the critical wet blanket who comes along and says, it's not all roses and rainbows, really. There are actually big trade-offs, big problems, and big limitations with the radical Dionysian skitzed out approaches. And I guess on some level, I just kind of got a little tired personally of stuff that makes no sense, basically. So I just made the crazy argument that maybe you want to actually focus on making sense. That could be interesting. All right, enough on that. Let me talk now about Milady. So I wrote in this newsletter that I put out just a couple days ago about many things, but one of them, the lead section in that newsletter was the Miladies. So yeah, let me talk about this. Oh, actually, before I forgot to mention this at the very beginning. I'm going to be in New York City for a few days around the weekend of May 20th. So if you're in New York City or in that area, I have some official business, like there's going to be events and stuff. I'll be speaking at some things or doing some things. I'll let you know details when I have them finally. But I'm going to be there for a handful of days. I don't know exactly how many yet. So I'm going to have I'm going to have time to do some other things. I'm probably going to record some podcasts. If you want to invite me on your podcast, I'll probably come on. If you have drugs you want to do with me, I'll take your drugs and do them with you if you're cool. If you have a podcast and you have drugs, I'll do your drugs and do your podcast right after we do the drugs. Yeah, or parties, whatever. I'm most open to giving talks. If you have a venue or you have something going on and you want me to give a talk, just let me know. Sign up to the newsletter and then hit reply and send me invitations or whatever. I'm happy to. I want to make a lot. I have a little baby now, so I'm not able to travel that as much as I'd like. So if I'm going to be there, I want to go hard and just get a lot done. So reach out if you're in New York and or want to be in New York and want to come to things. Again, if you want to get involved I'm probably going to throw an event. Shout out to someone who replied to my newsletter, and I already have a couple options for nice venues. So yeah, I'm going to be doing some things in New York. That's all you need to know for now. If you want to stay tuned, just follow the newsletter, and I'll be sending more updates over the next month, but that'll be in May 20th or a few days around May 20th. There'll be a lot going on. So just follow the newsletter and I'll send things out if you want to come hang out. All right. But moving on. So yeah, the Milady NFT collection is pretty interesting. Of all the stuff going on in crypto, it's kind of the most, other than Urbit, it's kind of the most interesting project in my eyes right now. And in fact, of course, the Milady crew is on Urbit, which makes total sense. Similar vibes, and if you ask me, well, first of all, let me maybe show you. So this is what the Miladies look like. This is my Milady. I have one. The price has gone up significantly in the past few days, so I'm thinking about buying another, but I'm not that rich, so I have to think hard about these things. I'm not a big baller yet, so I have to think hard about whether or not I can justify it to my wife when she starts looking over the finances. If I can say with a straight face that I spent 0.6 ETH on Milady, am I prepared to make that argument? Yet I'm not sure that I am, but I kind of want to. So these are what they call a neo chibi aesthetic. I don't even know what that is. I mean, I kind of do. It's like Asian or Japanese or something. And yeah, so it's an NFT set of 10,000, and it's these little Asian girls basically. And they have all different kinds of styles, all different kinds of jackets, and some have face tattoos, some have different earrings. And yeah, so this is mine. I just bought the cheapest one when I decided I was going to buy one. I just bought the cheapest one, and it's this little chick with a Western jacket. And so I bought it for 0.1 ETH 2 weeks ago, and now the floor price of the set is 0.6 ETH or something like that. So not bad, about a 6x, roughly, something like that. I don't know, maybe not quite that much. I might be rounding up, but okay. So why am I talking about this? Why is Milady interesting? Well, if you actually go look into the gang and the community, they're totally skitzed out accelerationists basically, and so I don't know too much about the founder of the Remelia corporation that does these, and I don't want to spread rumors or whatever, so I'm gonna not say much because I don't know too much, but I did when I did the podcast with Soph, and we talked about it in there. If you want to learn more about kind of the vibe of Remelia, you should go listen to the Other Life podcast like 4 episodes ago, where we talk about it. And basically, I don't know this for a fact, but I from what I gather, I think that basically the founder of the Remelia Corporation, I think is like a mad genius kind of person who I don't know them. I've DM'd with them a couple times, so I can't endorse them. I can't say anything good or bad. I just don't know them enough to say anything. But the vibe I get from the founder of Remelia, or like the CEO of Remelia, is just like some chaotic, dark, mad genius vibes that I don't have to endorse or reject to say that this is, I think, the essential kind of dark truth of crypto. That is precisely the truth of crypto that's being systematically underrated right now. So, my friend Jeff Lewis, the venture capitalist who is here in Austin, he and his partner are known for this term, or this concept of what they call narrative violations. So his venture capital firm called Bedrock has this kind of founding manifesto that's all about what they call narrative violations. And that's their investing philosophy. They look for projects that defy some kind of dominant narrative. And it makes sense. And they kind of explain how they think that through. But I like this phrase of narrative violation. And to me, the meta narrative of crypto right now is GM, WAGMI, we are going to make it. It's this like super happy-go-lucky, we're all going to get rich, we're all going to liberate each other, we're all going to be happy, and it's going to be perfect rainbows and roses. This crypto thing is just going to make everyone happy. It's beautiful and wonderful. Meanwhile, people are, getting super rich, tons of back channeling, exploitation of public perceptions, people getting rugged all the time. And so there's this super happy-go-lucky gloss on top of our still infantile crypto culture. And to me, the narrative violation of crypto is anything that points to the dark, unhinged, maniacal, crazed, chaotic, and techno-capitalist intensity that is truly at the core of crypto, which is not a pretty thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It is what it is, and there's going to be good, and there's also going to be bad. It's going to be hyper intense. It's a hyper brutal kind of increase in efficiency, in the efficiency of capitalism itself. And so this is going to bring a lot of the good that's been associated with capitalism, but it's also going to bring a lot of the bad that's associated with capitalism. And the fact that no one in crypto is really leaning into and really embracing or expressing the dark side says to me that the culture is systematically overpricing that which is happy and, rainbow colored, and it's systematically underpricing the dark reality, the chaotic realities, the accelerationist realities. And so to me, this is nothing to do with, some kind of philosophical endorsement like I believe in this or I believe in that. No, it's just like there is a technological reality and a social reality to the cryptocurrency revolution. A substantial part of that is fundamentally dark in nature. It's brutal, it's chaotic, it's uncontrollable, it's frightening. And therefore, you have to expect that a big part of crypto moving forward is going to be crazy people doing crazy things with some negative consequences here and there that are truly unhinged and truly crazy. And no one wants to talk about this right now. It's all roses and rainbows and GM and we're going to make it. So I'm interested in anything that breaks that narrative of GM and rainbows and roses. To me, the Miladies are an example. If you go look at the community on Twitter or in the Discord, go look into the people who built it. They're explicit. They like danger. They like violence. They like accelerationism. They have this truly dark, twisted, antagonistic, highly pseudonymous, but also intelligent and sophisticated kind of hive mind insurgency against the status quo mentality. That, again, I'm not saying necessarily that I like it, because I genuinely think it's probably, there's going to be weird things coming out of it. Maybe even some violence, maybe even some death. I do think that these are live wires in crypto culture that are going to happen eventually, because crypto is crazier than anyone wants to admit. It's much more significant and more for the bad as well as for the good than anyone wants to admit. And so I am interested in that which breaks the narrative mold of crypto right now. I'm interested in the narrative violations in crypto that publicly represent the darkness and the chaos and the danger that is sure to unfold. And so that's why I bought a Milady a couple weeks ago. And also because I got to meet some of the people and talk to some of the people, and they just seem smart, and they seem like they have the operational capacity to actually make this NFT set a big thing. Not financial advice, definitely not telling anyone to go buy anything at all. But these are the considerations that went into my analysis of Milady and what I see with Milady and why I'm interested in it. I mean, that's a fancy way of describing my mental model, but it's probably at the end of the day much more simple that they're the only NFT crew that I see talking about Nick Land. And, if people are talking about Nick Land in crypto, I just have to kind of give it a second look. And I think they're probably onto something, because I think, many of I think Nick Land is probably still to this day, to this moment, probably the single most underrated living philosopher, I would say. And so, yeah, I see these things. I see the correlation with Urbit as well. I think Urbit, by the way, is another kind of narrative violation in crypto right now. I think Urbit actually is way more positive and emancipatory and kind of lighthearted than people think. But from the outside, from people who don't know about kind of the Urbit culture, a lot of people still associate it with the kind of the controversies around Curtis Yarvin and the seemingly kind of dark image or reputation of Curtis Yarvin. And so it still fits into this portfolio of bets that I'm making around, the dark underbelly of crypto, because that's how it's seen still. That's how it's perceived. There's, in other words, I think a major bias in contemporary culture, how the market perceives Urbit. There's a major bias that's leading the market to underestimate and underprice the value of Urbit because of this dominant narrative of everything is about, rainbows and roses. Well, I don't believe that. I think, Urbit is underpriced for that reason. I think Milady is underpriced for that reason. And these are the types of things that I am interested in. I'm interested in the aspects of crypto culture that are, for one reason or another, purposely or not purposely, mispriced due to kind of this systematic positivity bias in crypto culture today. So, yeah, I wrote a little bit about that in this last Signs of Life newsletter. So I also wrote this long essay, not super long, but just several lines about Bad Baby, the rapper Bad Baby. I don't know how many of you even know who that is. But as I said, I studied in the past couple of years, I've studied hundreds of commercially successful creators to understand the various different paths to power that people pursue. And this is honestly, I think, one of the craziest stories I've ever studied. If you don't know, Bad Baby was brought onto the Dr. Phil show at 13 years old by her mother because she was such a crazy youth. The episode that she was on Dr. Phil was entitled, "I Want to Give Up My Car-Stealing, Knife-Wielding, Twerking 13-year-old Daughter Who Tried to Frame Me for a Crime." Okay, that's the mother describing Bad Baby. At the time, her name's Danielle Bregoli. So she goes on Dr. Phil at 13 years old, and she's basically just trolling Dr. Phil the whole time, like totally dunking on him. She's just a wild, ungovernable young lady, basically. And at some point, she threatens the audience with the audience is making fun of her or saying something about her. Those shows are so crazy, by the way. The whole Dr. Phil, Jerry Springer model is insanely exploitative and just disgust. It's insane to me that was ever a thing, and that boomers thought that was like totally normal and cool to bring on 13-year-old kids to a public television show and humiliate them. Like that should be like a capital crime. That's just absolutely insane and psychotic. And then the boomers look at the Zoomers and they say that, they say like Milady's are psychotic. The Milady gang is psychotic. Dude, Dr. Phil and the normalization of absolute psychosis at the network news level is the really insane and dangerous thing in any event. One of the famous things that Danielle Bergoli says on Dr. Phil is she says to the audience, she says, "Catch me outside, how about that?" "Catch me outside, how about that?" And she kind of like slurs it like that. "Catch me outside, how about that?" "Catch me outside, how about that?" And she's basically saying like, yeah, fight me in the parking lot, I'll fuck you up. And that went mega viral as a meme. And this was back in 2016, so not that long ago, but several years ago. And that meme went of her saying, "Catch me outside, how about that?" It went so viral that she basically got a record deal as a rapper. The reason being that a DJ, like remixed her saying, "Catch me outside, how about that?" He remixed it into a single, which went like to the top of the charts. And so an executive from Atlantic Records called her up like a few days later, and she had never made music before. She had never rapped before, but didn't matter. They signed her to Atlantic Records. And then she made like some music or whatever. She learned how to do it. And then years later, she went back onto Dr. Phil and she told him, she said, "I made you, Dr. Phil. You were nothing before me. I made you famous." And she's kind of right. Like she became so massive from that one viral hit that it probably was the single most famous bit of Dr. Phil ever. So in that way, she's kind of right. But anyway, she never let go of the Dr. Phil beef. To this day, she does YouTube videos where she like is talking about Dr. Phil this, Dr. Phil that. So she's like milked that for all that it's worth, and she has platinum records. Like she wasn't just like a fluke. She made multiple records as a rapper, and they sold well, which is just a totally insane story. And so yeah, I think it's kind of inspiring, for people who are ungovernable crazy people, that this is a interesting path to totally dominate your haters and the boring bougie exploiters. Let them try to humiliate you, and then when you're on their stage, you just pull a Diogenes and you totally shit on them, and then you skyrocket to the top based on your ability to do that. I think it's honestly a pretty cool story, and in my own way, I find it inspiring. Of course, I'm not a 13-year-old girl, and I have no interest in rapping, despite the short-lived career of Lil JB. But I find that to be pretty inspiring. Anyway, I wrote about some other things, but like I said, I've been writing too much lately. I've been writing so much lately, I can't even fit it all into this podcast for the week. So I'm getting a little tired. I'm probably just going to wrap it up. But I want to remind you, please go ahead and subscribe to the Other Life newsletter if you're not already. That's where I publish my best stuff. And, it's growing fast now, and I'm super pumped. So I'm all the good stuff. And, we have an awesome private community kicking off. That was the final thing I told you I would talk about before we wrap it up, is the Urbit group. The Urbit group is basically totally kicking off. So about 2 months ago, there were only about 500 people in my Urbit group, and 2 or 3 months later, there's now about 1,000. So in the past 2 months or so, 2 or 3 months, I guess maybe 4. I'm bad with time. Somewhere around 2 to 4 months, I've onboarded, not just like given a planet to, but actually gotten into the group, so they're on the network and they're using it. At least 500 people. Maybe some more that don't show up in that figure. So my group has doubled in size in a few months, and that now makes it certainly, I would say, it's got to be certainly the fastest growing group. So It's pretty exciting. And what that means is we now have, you know, like a lot of people in the group where people are writing. And I'm really beginning this process of, over time, I am going to be distributing and decentralizing ownership of the Other Life community to the community. And so, for instance, something I'll show you is that like a few days ago, someone wrote in so the Urbit group has its own private group blog. So it doesn't go out to the public internet, but there's 1,000 people in the group. So you're basically writing to it. You have an audience of about 1,000 people. Anyone can post to this group blog who's in the Urbit group. And what I've told the community is if I find something in there that's really cool and kind of on brand for my audience, I might just, take a quote or share it. I might curate it and post it to the Other Life newsletter. And what I said is if you write something in the open group blog on the Urbit group and I use it, I feature it in my newsletter, I'm going to pay you crypto retroactively. And to me, this is like a very exciting and this is a very natural kind of next step to decentralizing ownership of the community. Because what it basically means is people in the group can just have fun, think what they want, read what they want, and write what they want, share what they want in the group. And just by having fun and sharing valuable ideas or insights or interesting content in the group, if it's really interesting and you're adding value to the community, to the Urbit group, especially if I can use it in some way, like for a larger audience, then you deserve to reap the rewards of that because you're adding value to the group. So therefore, you should there should be value that accrues to you. And this one time, I just threw the guy ETH. But where this really goes in the long run is, I think I'm going to start paying in the community token, the Life token, because then what that means is really pretty profound if you think about it. Because what it means is that if you're a writer or someone who just has interesting, crazy ideas in philosophy or social science or internet culture, the stuff that I write about that the group is implicitly kind of organized around, you can basically just join the Urbit group, share everything you're doing, share ideas, engage in conversations, just basically live and think and have fun. And if it's good stuff, then you'll be accumulating Life token. And if that group continues to get better because you're adding value to it, then your wealth should accrue as well in the long term. Again, this is not like it's not a financial play. It's not like a financial asset or a speculative asset or anything like that. But that is the logic that, and when you start thinking about how that connects with like the primitives that define Urbit, it becomes a kind of very, very exciting, almost to the point of like you have to pinch yourself, because think about it. Let's say I donate my star, my Urbit star that runs that basically sponsors all of these planets. Let's say I donate my star to a multisig that is controlled by a sample of kind of leading members of the community, and all the decisions about what to do with that star and the actual ownership of that star is owned by the multisig. So I no longer own the star. I no longer own the group. It's literally a group within the group that owns the group. Okay, but all decisions that are made for actually doing anything with the group could be subject to a vote by people who hold the token. And at that point, if you were to get all of those parameters designed intelligently and correctly, then you would have a bunch of people, okay, who own their own data. They have complete control over their own data. They have complete privacy. They have kind of crypto primitives built in for sending and receiving payments. And the very real estate on which they do their interacting, the actual group itself, the ether through which people communicate and share value, the social graph itself, basically, and its infrastructure, would itself be owned by the people in the group in proportion to the value that they've contributed in the past. Only on Urbit are you going to see communities that can say all of those things. Only on Urbit are you going to have these truly and strictly community-owned communities where the members literally own the very real estate that they're operating on, living on, and adding value to. And so the tooling is not quite there to make this like super sleek or smooth or integrated quite yet, but it's coming. I have an episode coming out in the next couple weeks about the DAO tools that are being built on Urbit. So check that out if you want to know more about where this is going in terms of actual tools. But to me, this is like the most vertiginously fascinating and exciting kind of opportunity for writers, for creators, for anyone who's an interesting, intelligent, creative person on the internet, is whoever gets this right, whoever's able to figure out a truly community-owned group where simply creating value in the group with words, with ideas, with blog posts, or what have you, can immediately and directly get you paid, but also get you paid in a medium that itself, the value of it increases as the group itself increases in value. The alignment of incentives is just right there is just like so kind of insanely perfect and tight. That's just positive feedback loop after positive feedback loop, where incentives are kind of just like supercharged for basically people to just think freely, think creatively, write powerfully, and write honestly. You get like a whole bunch of people in a group doing that where they're getting paid to do it, and the value of that payment that they're receiving is itself increasing because the overall quality of the group itself is increasing. That's a recipe for value creation that's just like mind blowing. And so, like I said, we're early. No one's like fully figured this out yet, but whoever figures it out on Urbit is going to be, I think, light years ahead of anyone who figures it out somewhere else, like on Discord or whatever. Just because only on Urbit do you actually own everything in the whole stack, and is it possible for like a DAO to own everything in the whole stack? So yeah, that's where my vision is going. That's really kind of what I'm thinking about. That's kind of the end goal that I really see for the Other Life community. I'm currently calling it the imperceptible country is kind of the code word that I'm using for this project in my mind, and also in some of the public writing that I've been doing around this. It is actually something that you can check out. It's just a draft at the moment. It is actually open, but I'm kind of rationalizing some of my other things, and I'm not super hyping it quite yet. But the way I'm thinking about it is it's basically like just like, the average Substack newsletter or whatever, always has a paid option. And it's usually the way people do it is, if you're a paying subscriber, you get like an extra set of newsletters each week. Perhaps it's like more valuable stuff, it's private stuff or whatever. I don't really want to do that because, like I said, I'm interested in, sharing my ideas as widely as possible. I want to grow the audience. I don't really want to paywall like my newsletters, So what I'm doing is I'm going to pursue this vision of a radically community-owned community, a community that's truly owned by all of its members from the ground up completely. And I think that is really the most promising vector that leads towards this idea of network states and cloud countries. And to me, that's really the long-term vision. And I think, my community is just insanely cool and badass. And I think the Other Life community is honestly better positioned to create a new sovereign country than perhaps any other group or organization or cooperative right now, simply because if you look at all the other ones, like if you look at, CityDAO, or you look at Praxis, and I like Praxis. I'm friends with those guys. I support Praxis. I think I'm a member of Praxis, and so I think many people are going to make great progress in this collective adventure of trying to form new sovereign political entities. But the big problem with those other organizations is that when you try to build a project around the concept of building a country, you're not really harnessing like an organic, dynamic cultural energy. You're getting a bunch of people who are interested in a shared goal, which is great. But then you have this problem of what is really the underlying shared chemistry that's going to push them forward. It's hard to manufacture that, and it's hard to find that. You can hope that you can brew it, but this is what I call the Web3 trap. I wrote this in a previous newsletter, this idea that a lot of the cool projects in Web3 suffer from this trap where it's like, because they're just trying to do cool thing X using Web3, all they really get in terms of people coming out to do that thing is people who are interested in Web3. But a bunch of people who are interested in Web3 are not like a powerful, like that's not the kind of really powerful cultural dynamic that you want. What you want is a bunch of people who are really interested in X, Y, or Z, and then they use Web3 tools to just supercharge the thing that they're interested in. And in my view, what is more powerful or exciting as a substrate for building community or building countries or building, new cities? What is a better substrate than the basic commonality of just kind of independent intellectual life, or, people defecting from institutions to pursue, writing outside of academia? Like whatever it is you see me as representing, or whatever you see as the definition of the Other Life brand or whatever, it's something more or less like this. It's autodidacts and deeply independently minded people, whether it's, PhD school dropouts or professors who retire early like me to be a wild man on the internet, or engineers who work for some FANG company but decide to quit because they want to like build a compound on a farm somewhere. It's like these are the types of people that define the Other Life community basically, and all they really have in common is a strong desire for freedom, a deep-seated need for intellectual independence, and for working hard on their own projects outside of institutions. Like and also like especially kind of writers, people interested in philosophy, people with a kind of philosophical, social scientific, engineering kind of bent. So all the people in the Other Life community, the Other Life community was badass way before Web3 even came around. So Web3 is not one of our common denominators. It's not like a Web3 circle jerk. It's actually people who are friendly and collaborating and writing things together, doing podcasts together, building things together already before Web3. And they're doing so on shared values and shared attitudes that are highly, highly scarce and valuable and powerful. And so I take a step back and I really think about like what I have with the Other Life brand and with this community, with people listening or watching or reading the newsletter. And I'm like, I actually think that this Other Life community might be better positioned than any other group in the world to actually build the kind of social corporation of the future, the cloud city or the cloud country, the network state, whatever you want to call it, of the future, and unlock the value that only like crypto and Urbit aligned incentive structures are going to be able to provide. I actually think we might be better suited and better poised to solve this puzzle, to solve this riddle and crack this code than maybe any other group in the world right now. That might sound crazy, that might sound narcissistic, or that might sound, delusions of grandeur, but hey, go watch the Kanye documentary. Sometimes you want to have delusions of grandeur. Sometimes that's just what you need. So this is what I've been thinking about, and this is what I really think is now in my mind the most exciting and kind of defining vision that I have for the Other Life community, for Urbit, and for not for Urbit as a whole, but for what I'm doing on Urbit anyway, for my interest on Urbit. And this is just what I've become obsessed with. And so it's a research project. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of tinkering and experimentation. But the code word for this project is the imperceptible country. You can learn more about it at imperceptible.country. I'll be kind of explaining more about how I see it working and designing it with you all over time. But you can technically join now if you want to. I haven't really settled strongly on what the parameters will be and exactly how it will work. But it's coming more and more in my mind. Someone in the chat says, please accept my Agora boarding pass request, Mr. Murphy. It will be my first NFT. So this person is referring to when you join the Urbit group, when you join the Imperceptible City, I give you some quests to do, and one of them involves getting your first NFT on Urbit. And Urbit has a very interesting architecture. You can't do this anywhere else, where these are soul-bound NFTs that are attached to your digital identity kind of automatically. Like, you can't sell them, in other words. You can't transfer them. And so this is actually really interesting and cool for lots of different reasons when it comes to, things like commemorating singular and unique relationships, let's say. And so this person is saying, please accept the Agora boarding pass. And the answer to your question, my friend, is that you just need to update your subscriptions. If you look through the replies in that post, you'll find instructions on what to do to see your Agora. All right. So yeah. All right. I think I'm done. That's a wrap. We covered the Miladies. We covered Angelicism. We covered. I'm going to be in New York on May 20th, around a few days around May 20th. So get at me if you want to, invite me to your podcast, or you want to have a party, or you want to do drugs with me, whatever. Let me know. And yeah, and at the very least, go subscribe to the Other Life newsletter, because I've been writing a lot on there, and that's really the focus that's the centerpiece of the whole community. So to stay tuned for everything, I really just encourage you to subscribe to the Other Life newsletter. All right. I hopefully will do more solo streams like this. I don't know how many I will do. Things are kind of crazy with the podcast studio that we have now. So I'm just, as always, doing too many things, but it's fun to do this every so often, give you a personal update on a bunch of different things and talk about a few different themes. Yeah, maybe I'll do this again. I can't promise I'll do it every week. I sometimes feel like I should, and sometimes vaguely aspire to, but we'll see. It might just be like a periodic thing. Every so often, we'll do a solo update podcast from me in my little home office here. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a review on iTunes, on Apple Podcasts if you are listening to the podcast. However you get this. Yeah, reach out. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you, and I'll see you in the Urbit group. All right, folks, over and out.